through Brian, where they worked construction together. He was a widower and had issues with being alone. He just didn't like it. So he moved in with the Angels Landing group, and of course he moved in with Jennifer, and that was in 2004. So during this same time, Castro started dating a woman named Megan Harbert. And once they started dating, he had a bunch of them go and get life insurance policies. So Brian, Jennifer, Catherine, and even his new baby mama, Megan Harbert, yeah, they all got life insurance policies. So Castro and Megan, yes, they did end up having a child together named Angelica in December of 2004. Man.
It's crazy, man. It's really crazy.
Yeah.
Now we got a time jump to around March of 2006. Brian had decided to move away from Angels Landing and settle down in South Dakota for a little while. It was around that time that Castro was pretty much shooting the shit with a buddy of his named Philip Young, and he decided to tell Philip, yeah, I don't think Brian's going to be coming back to this group at all. Either Castro actually had seer powers, or he already knew something bad was going to happen to Brian, because Brian died in an accident where pretty much a vehicle had crushed him while he was underneath of it working on it.
Jesus Christ. So yeah, Brian had been a diesel mechanic for many years, and he'd always been like super careful, especially underneath the vehicle. But one day he was just crushed underneath the vehicle when the jack slipped out from underneath it. Well, Catherine, of course, being the beneficiary of the life insurance of Brian, her account was filled back up again, and they could all live their lavish lifestyle there on Angels Landing.
I just couldn't believe this shit when I read it. Still can't believe it. So sometime during August of 2006, a woman named Sherry Cox and her 8-year-old daughter, who's to be known as Cece, began visiting Castro at Angels Landing, which it was very obvious that he decided to take interest in Cece. And, of course...
Oh, good Lord.
I don't even know how to fucking say this now.
Jesus. Yeah, I don't even... Oh, God. He was a creep. He took pictures of her in swimsuits, okay?
Yeah.
What a freaking weirdo. What? He would place a camera in the bathroom?
He had one of the other girls place the camera in the bathroom so he could get photos of her undressing. But I don't know if they stayed there any longer than that. They were just visiting. But we don't hear anything about Sherry and her daughter for a while until near the very end.
Okay.
Which they play a big part in it.
All right. So let's go to September of 2008. You remember the detective a while back that was looking into Castro?
Yeah, Goodwin.
Yeah, Detective Goodwin. Well, he was notified that Jennifer Hudson was killed in a car accident. According to eyewitness statements, Jennifer should have been able to clearly see that she was heading straight into oncoming traffic. But she didn't, and she died. So again, Catherine was the beneficiary of the life insurance policy, and this made Detective Goodwin even more determined to figure out what the hell was going on. So in his mind, the detective's mind, he believed that Castro sort of had this influence over the people there and kind of had influenced Jennifer to commit suicide. So he was trying to figure out who Castro really was and decided to show up at Angels Landing one day with some glossy photos of random suspects. And as he was showing the photos to Castro, hoping he would, hold the pictures and leave fingerprints on them. What a smart way to get fingerprints.
Yeah, it was a smart way.
Holy smokes. Take a look at these photos and then get his fingerprints and run them. Oh my gosh. Okay.
But get this. Castro already caught on to this immediately. He knew what the detective was trying to do. So instead, he had the detective put the photos on a nearby table and he used his fingernail to move the photos around. He already knew. After Detective Goodwin left, Castro started to get nervous, and that's when he told Sarah, they were trying to get me. Later that day, he actually took off to Tennessee to start looking for a new house there. And by now, with the way he treated the girls, he had driven a wedge between the sisters Emily and Sarah. pretty much making them hate each other. This is when Sarah decided to move out of Angel's Landing to live on her own. Now, Catherine stayed behind in Angel's Landing with Emily and Nicole so they could finish the school year there. But Castro and Megan, and supposedly a new member of the group, a man named Blake, no idea where he came from, no idea how he knows the group.
He just randomly showed up and was like, hey guys, I'm Blake.
Yeah, they all moved to Tennessee by 2009.
Then, by late June of 2009, the 3 girls that stayed behind for school ended up joining the others in Tennessee. Sarah was now 24, had already settled down living on her own for the first time, and started dating a man named Daniel McGrath. Now, as Sarah and Daniel got closer, of course, they started sharing with one another life stories, in which Sarah shared with Daniel everything that had happened with the group. The deaths, the life insurance, and everything, including, the life insurance being their main source of income there at the Angel's Landing Call. Now, she even told Daniel about how everyone in the group was expected to serve Castro and how he would rape her from the age of 17 till she moved out at the age of 24. Wow. Sad.
So Daniel, after hearing all this, was extremely pissed off about it. But he knew that he needed to do something. So he decided to report this man, Castro, to the FBI in January of 2010. He ended up reporting it to a detective named John Sullivan, which ended up working with Detective Goodwin. They ended up joining forces and went to interview Daniel McGrath about what the information that he had shared with the FBI. Detective Goodwin found out that John Sullivan had been investigating Castro since 2007, but they never explained what he was investigating him for. So the FBI was already looking into him, but they never did anything.
Wow. All right, so with the 2 detectives working together and the tips coming in from Daniel McGrath, they actually found out that Castro had actually assumed a new identity. Again. This time, it was Joe Venegas, and I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Actually, I'm not. Fuck you, Joe. Fuck you, Castro. Whatever your name is. Daniel Perez. Now, this Joe, or Castro, whatever you want to call him, or Daniel, he now lived in Columbia, Tennessee. Now, they were able to find out that he had opened a new bank account under his new name, and they were able to look at surveillance tapes and quickly confirm it was indeed Castro. And this was actually proof of him committing bank fraud.
Yeah, so now they got him on something.
Yep.
Because on April 21st, 2010, the detectives were able to get a search warrant for Castro's new residence in Tennessee, and Detective Goodwin felt there was a need of urgency because during his investigation, he realized that there seemed to be a death every 2.5 years, which it was almost that time. So every 2.5 years, someone would die, life insurance would be claimed, wait another 2.5 years and do the same.
Dan, you want to go get a life insurance with me?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay.
Do I have to wait 2.5 years for something to happen? They discovered 11 firearms and 2 wallets containing identification for Lou Castro and Joe Venegas, with a social security card and birth certificate for the identity Joe. Castro was then taken into custody that day, and while he was being processed, they found is when they discovered that Joe wasn't his real name, Lou wasn't his real name, that he was actually Daniel Perez, who they had thought had died a while back when they found a body.
So Castro was sentenced to 2 years in jail for aggravated identity theft and social security fraud. Now, while he was serving that time, the investigation was still ongoing, with them interviewing Sarah and Emily multiple times. Sarah would come forward and tell them about the abuse she suffered, and Emily would come forward explaining the events around Trisha's drowning, which that would be the icing on the cake for Castro. So on September 11th, 2011, what a date.
Never forget.
Castro was charged in Sedgwick County District Court in Kansas with 1 count of first-degree murder for Patricia's death, 10 counts of rape, 10 counts of aggravated criminal sodomy, 3 counts of aggravated assault, 11 accounts of making false information, and 1 count of criminal threat. Easy.
Yeah, well, by the time the trial did come around, some of those charges had been amended to 1 count of first-degree premeditated murder, 1 count of sexual exploitation of a child, 8 counts of rape, 7 counts of aggravated criminal sodomy, 3 counts of aggravated sexual assault, and 8 counts of making false information. So the trial was held in February of 2015, where members of Angels Landing's group testified for the prosecution, which included, Daniel McGrath, Catherine, Emily, Sarah, Michelle, Cody, Marilyn, David, all of them. Even Sherry and her daughter. They were all there.
So they testified about their moving from one state to another over the 15-year period, and testified about the ongoing sexual violence by Castro, aka Daniel Perez, even his involvement with the 6 deaths involving Mona, Lindsay, Jim, Trish, Jennifer, and Brian, but ultimately he was only charged for Trish's death. So Castro, Perez, whatever you want to call him now, tried to say he was not at home when Trish died, but that didn't work. And then when it didn't work, he tried denying that he'd told anyone that he had special powers and that the sex was always consensual. But, of course, they're kids. It's not consensual. It's rape.
Yeah. Don't know how he thought he could play that one off.
I don't know.
Then for his crimes in Texas, before he supposedly died, he never actually served any jail time. And he blamed the beating that he got from the 4 uniformed men.
Oh, yeah, where he was first. So after he got arrested and they found out that he was actually Daniel Perez, he told the investigators, "Hey, I was abducted by 4 uniformed men. They beat the living hell out of me. They left me for dead." And he wasn't sure if he was dumped in Texas or Mexico. And that Trish found him and cared for him until he recovered. That's what he told him.
That's what he told him.
That happened to me.
Yeah. He said that incident right there caused him to have amnesia, which he forgot about all of the things that he did. Then he said that he had no clue where the money came from that he was living off of. So all the life insurance money and all that, he pretended that he didn't know where it was coming from.
Oh my God.
He blamed the women. He said that they were in charge of the money. Then Daniel Perez, he was convicted on all counts and sentenced to 2 life terms with a consecutive sentence of 80 years, which he is currently locked up at the Lansing Correctional Facility in Kansas. And honestly, that right there is the horrible story of Daniel Perez and the Angels Landing cult. Oh, and he won't be eligible for parole till 2095.
Oh, he'll be long dead by then.
I hope so.
Unless he really is 1,000 years old.
Yeah.
What a piece of crap.
Arthur, Daniel, or Amber Angel saves him.
Yeah, so after all this happened, we tried to look to see if we can find any updates on how the victims were doing after this horrific experience. So Sarah ended up marrying Daniel McGrath, which is awesome, and they stayed in Wichita, Kansas. Her sister Emily is a paralegal in South Carolina with the hopes of becoming a lawyer someday. And even though Daniel Perez drove a wedge kind of like between the two, they are now closer than ever. And, they're closer with not just each other, but their father as well. So that's good,
Yeah.
A good ending to a crazy-ass story, But my thing is, what's the deal with the car dealership? Was that kind of like his way of not being there?
That was his alibi. He told Emily to wait to call the police after Trish died so he could get to the car dealership with Sarah to pretend like they were buying a new car. So his alibi would be, "Oh, I wasn't at the house. I was at the car dealership. They have my alibi. You can ask them."
Oh my God.
And it worked.
Yep. So we don't really have any strange facts and findings because that's the entire story right there. It's not like, there was anything additional to it. I mean, we looked and looked and looked. That's all the information there was about the story. We figured it'd be a good, quote-unquote, cult story that not many people talk about,
Dude, considering all the shit that happened, life insurance policies and stuff, it was rarely talked about.
Yeah, and how long it happened for. Crazy.
When you're actually trying to search up this, incident with the Angels Landing, most of the stuff that you're going to find is about the hiking trail, Angels Landing. So it's covered up by a friggin' hiking trail.
Damn. All right, so we do have a couple theories, though, that we're going to talk about. So I'll take the first theory. So this first theory is that Daniel Perez was just a lazy piece of shit who took advantage of other people to feed his pedophile and lazy ways.